There we go. Hide floating meat terms. Okay. All right. Awesome. Ready to get started? Nice. Okay. So I'm Harris. I'm one of the instructors here.
I'm going after you.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, sure. Okay, so I'm going to be doing the first part of this workshop. This workshop's going to be broken into two parts. I'll be doing one on threat intelligence, just to give you some background on basically how cybersecurity research collect and share information about malware and exploits. And then Liz is going to be doing the second half where she actually goes over some of her internship writings about ransomware.
It's like copyright reasons because I can't have it published. It's not mine to publish. So hence why no recording, no taking pictures, none of that. Like you can take notes on the information because it's all open source. You can find it on Google. If you Google, you can find like, this is where I found it. There are news articles about it. So not classified, just can't be published.
Side note, I think this is actually one of my favorite topics within the realm of cybersecurity, just because like this is like how they catch hackers. Like this is how they actually find the information, how they collect it, process it, and then share it and actually perform cybersecurity research that keeps people safe. We actually do a lot of it in the club, especially during CCDC. That's a big part of the competition, is having a way to get the intelligence on your adversary and then reporting them. So this is a big part of cybersecurity, and I highly encourage you guys to explore more about beyond this workshop. But we're going to get started. Are there any questions up front before I get started? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so this is just a general overview of the workshop. I'm going to be covering what is threat intelligence, the general methodology behind it, some of the tools, and then also a little bit about threat hunting. So threat intelligence, as a definition, it's the data that's collected, processed, and analyzed to understand threat actors. And we're going to define threat actors in a minute. The threat actors in this case, you can think of them as cyber adversaries. It's used by forensic investigators, threat hunters, cybersecurity research, and governments. Basically, anybody involved within cybersecurity, they're going to be doing some kind of threat intelligence. It's how they're going to collect their information and how they're going to perform their job. It's focused on the tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. That's an important term. It's used not only a lot in certifications. I know the Security Plus places a lot of heavy emphasis on that, but it's also used elsewhere in the industry. It's an important term to know. So these are some of the overall classifications of threat actors. You've probably heard a few of them. Script kiddies, that is, it's a funny one. It is generally just somebody who's brand new to cybersecurity or hacking, who just doesn't really know what they're doing, who's just randomly using tools, basically. So no real threat, but they are classified as that, just to recognize them. Insider threats, so that would be, for example, somebody within a government or a company that then wants to disclose something. It could be considered a whistleblower, although I put them more under activists. But basically anybody inside an organization that's actively harming them. Nation states, so those would be something like Russia, China, North Korea, states that are actively pursuing cyber weapons and malware as a method to kind of exact influence. Advanced persistent threats, that's another very important term, especially for certifications. APTs, they're basically any big hacking group that you've heard of or any very complicated or persistent malware probably came from an APT. They're generally what we focus on. Them and nation states are generally what threat intelligence from major companies like MITRE is focused on, because quite honestly, they're the most important. Activists, they'd be, a famous one would be anonymous. They're just people who are using basically their skills with hacking to basically pursue political means. And then, of course, cyber criminals, so your gray hats and black hat hackers could be out for money, prestige, for the fun of it, stuff like that. Good so far? Yes. Okay. So these are some of the sources that actual threat intelligence comes from. The biggest one probably is open source intelligence, or OSINT. That's also another big cybersecurity term. It's the passive and active gathering of publicly accessible information. So it's not really OSINT is basically like you're searching the web, you're using other data sources that are already available. You're not having to dig for them. You do have to do a little bit of digging. There are specific tools you can use to make it easier, but generally it's publicly accessible information. A great example of that is social media information hunting. So for example, if you wanted to perform a phishing attack on a company, you could then use social media to then gather data about that company. For example, LinkedIn, if you connect to an employee, you can then figure out their corporate domain for their email, and then you can send phishing emails to that corporation.
Keep taking pictures of their ID cards because you didn't take it off.
Yes. I was just watching a video of it's the same guy who held up the Uno reverse card to the ref in that soccer game, but it was also he broke into the national security conference. And the way he did it was people on social media had shared their cards and he just created one that looked like it and he was able to get through security. It's a real thing. And as for OSINT, we will cover it in future workshops. I believe we do have some planned in the spring. So stay tuned. Another great one is threat intel feeds. So these are actually specifically curated feeds, normally by companies, by corporations, typically for a price, although some are publicly accessible for free. And they're real-time threat information. So for example, if you were a cybersecurity researcher or a threat hunter, you would probably be subscribed to a threat intel feed just to stay up to date. It's basically like a threat intel news source. And finally, we have in-house analysis. So this would be, for example, if a company had a dedicated forensics team or a dedicated blue team. It varies by organization, but generally it would be performed using their internal tools and it would mostly be focused on their internal systems, not really on like external systems or like for a research purpose. It's mostly about securing the company's assets. Good so far? Nice. Overall, a lot of definitions to get out of the way, really. This is the general threat intel methodology. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how we actually do threat intel. The first is defining the requirements. The requirements are basically what intel do we want to collect? Maybe if we have to collect personally identifiable information, how are we going to handle that information? There's specific steps that you have to take in order to define what you're going to collect and how you're going to collect it. The actual collection phase, so that would be gathering it from different sources, for example, logs from different devices, cloud providers, different security appliances, stuff like that. Processing, that's actually taking it in, mostly likely into a SIEM or into some kind of processing system, and then gathering it, categorizing it, putting it into a database. Analysis, that's where the actual forensic investigation or the cybersecurity research occurs. Dissemination, after they've done the research and they find something interesting, for example, a new indicator of compromise, we'll cover those later, or for example, a new type of malware or even a 0-day, they'll then disseminate that to the cybersecurity community. And then they'll receive feedback on that in the form of basically for example, the companies could release patches, new methods for securing that specific 0-day could be developed. It could be listed as a CVE, stuff like that. I did mention some terms that might not be familiar. Is there anything that was unclear? Good. Okay. If I'm going too fast or you have any questions, just feel free to stop me, let me know. So now I'm going to get into some tools that I've found very useful when I've been doing just some general threat intelligence practice. The one that is I think the best for beginners and for people who want to get involved in this is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It's probably one of the best and most comprehensive publicly available threat intel repositories. It's got everything from info on your tactics, techniques, and procedures, mitigations, different advanced persistent threat groups, malware, even attack campaigns. So for example, I remember there was one recently, I think by North Korea, and then also I think there was one on the US pipelines. For example, that would have been an attack campaign because it was a dedicated series of cyber attacks. And more information. They also have a bunch of other cybersecurity research or cybersecurity resources. I encourage you to check them out. I have the website linked and I will share these slides so you will have access to these. I can pull it up right now just because I think it's really interesting just to walk through the website and see everything that's available. So you can see up here, this is basically everything they offer. They do have an attack matrix, which essentially shows all the different stages of how a cyber attack is performed. This is really good, especially if you want to understand how an attack happened. You can kind of walk through everything. So, and then each of these, they have their own different basically sub directories that you can walk through. And it really helps to actually put together the chain of an attack, which is especially important for forensics and then for actually showing the chain of events and creating that timeline. They also have different techniques that are listed. So for example, different kinds of techniques that the hackers can use. Any mitigations. I've used this for particularly groups. So a bunch of different people, you can see they have the description, different labels. And also I found this very interesting, the software. So these are the actual malwares and tools that the APT groups can use. Very extensive list. They're constantly updating it, and I find it very interesting to go through. I would encourage you all to go through and explore it. It's a very valuable resource. So yeah. The next tool I wanted to mention is Yara. This is basically it's a Swiss Army knife for threat intelligence. It's an extremely versatile tool. The name of the game with Yara is pattern recognition. And the reason that works well is because malware has patterns. So for example, if a security researcher finds a piece of malware, then you can set up a Yara rule that'll then match that pattern of malware. Say it's an identifiable string in a binary. You can see that string and then say, that's malware. We're going to block that file, for example, with an antivirus. There are many different tools that actually implement Yara. It's not just it is a standalone thing, but there are some tools that actually implement it. For example, one is an indicator of compromise scanner, like Loki. An indicator of compromise is basically any evidence on the machine, any forensic evidence that then shows that that machine has then been compromised. For example, with ransomware, an indicator of compromise could be all your files are locked. That's an extreme example. Normally, they're smaller, harder to find. Yeah. And then also there are websites like Valhalla that actually have curated Yara rules that you can then put into your programs. So say, for example, you specifically wanted to defend your system against Intel zero-day, or not zero-day attacks, Intel processor exploits. You can then put Yara rules in place to kind of stop that. Making sense so far? Good. I'm not going to go specifically into how you make Yara rules, but essentially, so in this case, you define the rule, give it a tag, and then it's mostly focused on strings and conditional statements. And then it has different tools you can use to basically process them and select exactly what you want. And it can even handle file metadata as well, which is especially important for malware. Good so far? This is another great threat intelligence tool. It's called Cisco Talos Intelligence. This is actually really great because it shows you basically where everything is occurring in real time. It has different IP and domain matching tools that you can use to show whether an IP or a domain is associated with a particular malware. And also has file reputation reports similar to like something like Malware Bazaar, and also has different incident responses. So it actually is a live threat intel reporting system. I'm going to navigate the website. I just think this one looks really cool.
What's the Kaspersky one? There's like a Kaspersky will have like a map that does real-time threat intel.
Cool. Yeah, I've never used Kaspersky, but yeah, I would guess, yeah. And they probably have this similar feeds. So you can see like over in the US here, different IPs associated with malware. Over around Egypt, there's some spam. So, different kinds of stuff that you can explore. And then this is, I think, just within the last 24 hours. Then a bunch of different stuff. So vulnerability reports, you can check IP and domain reputation, file reputation, incident response, and you can even, they have different news sources and stuff. Another really good source. I do encourage you, I'm mentioning these websites, but I do encourage you to explore them, look around for them, and they might prove useful if you go into threat intelligence as a cybersecurity career.
I have a question.
Sure.
How do they recognize that those are like I guess, IP addresses with cybersecurity issues.
So you're saying basically, how do they determine that the IP is malicious? Um, trial and error. I mean, because really what it is, these are reports. So people have gone to these IP addresses, they've seen, oh, this IP address, it has a malicious ad on the website and like that, or it is maybe it's the ad server that's serving a malicious ad, for example. So that would be an example of like an IP address. It's mostly dealing with reports. I don't think there's really a way to automatically determine. I mean, you could do pattern matching, like scan websites, but really it's just people that experience it, cybersecurity researchers, professionals, they'll witness them, then they'll report them and they'll aggregate that into the database.
Is that share from business to business, or is like a random citizen can report something?
I bet like a random person could report like, hey, this is malicious. For businesses, typically what they'll do is they'll have commercial systems. So these are just the free available ones. Most businesses, if they're like particularly concerned about cybersecurity, they'll actually pay to have access to a dedicated threat intel feeds to see, oh, like there's been like if you were like a financial company, you could pay to have access to like a threat intelligence source specifically curated for like financial intelligence, financial cybersecurity threats.
Cool. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. And normally those are pretty expensive. And they come with other stuff too. These are just some other threat intel tools that I found useful. Abuse.ch and URL scan, those are similar to what Cisco Talos does. They do reputation scanning of different domains. Malware Bazaar and Malshare, they're really good at like, say you have a file or you have the hash of a file. They have databases that you can then upload that hash or upload the act. With Malbazaar, I think you have to upload a hash or like some identifiable piece of information. Normally, they're not going to like have you upload the file because that could be bad because there's malware. But yeah, so you'll upload the hash of the file. The hash is just basically it identifies the contents of the file in a unique way. When you upload that hash, they'll search the database and then match it to something if it's in the database, and then you can determine whether or not it's a malicious file or not. And then also there's the malware information sharing program, MISP. Haven't personally used it, but I have heard good things about it. And I think it's free. I'm not entirely sure, but I wanted to put that out there because I have heard it is a good resource. And there are more. This is not an exhaustive list. So this is just resources that are there just to give you a hint of how threat intelligence is conducted. A lot of it is really just news, staying up to date, monitoring stuff, and then deciding how to appropriately respond. That's the biggest thing. It can seem a little boring. I get that. It can seem it's not as glamorous as, bouncing your way between networks, but it's just as important because that's actually how we defend people. You figure out where those attacks are coming from, and then you do threat hunting. So this is actively searching for cyber attacks or cyber threats within a network. Typically, this is done with three different ways: a hypothesis-driven investigation. So, for example, a cybersecurity researcher could have a guess that something is attacking the network. They could see some erratic behavior, and then they could investigate that further using a scientific method. They can investigate indicators of compromise. So, for example, a SIEM could pick up on different different artifacts within files that show, oh, maybe a worm got onto the network and it's attached to different files. Oh, well, that would be a virus, not a worm. But and then also you advanced analytical methods. Typically, this is done with machine learning. So say you go through a file and a machine learning algorithm could be trained to recognize patterns of malware versus non-malware. And this is also complementary to incident detection and response, because typically once you detect that an incident has occurred, you're then going to respond by first quarantining the network and then hunting out that threat to eliminate it in order to then bring back the network. Good so far? Any sense? Very good. This was a nice diagram from CrowdStrike. They're also another really great resource. I used a lot of their websites to help make this. And this is just a general overview of how it works. So you can see over here. So this is basically just raw telemetry. So that's, for example, all the different logs coming from the devices on your network. you can put it through your automated security analytics, but also go through automation. So that could have been, for example, the machine learning algorithm. If you see an alert, you then do triage. So that's basically where you're quarantining the network. And then you can also at the same time start doing threat hunting. And then after that, you then investigate and understand, well, how did they get into the network? How did they exploit the vulnerabilities within the network? And then you can create an appropriate response and resolve the incident. Good. Nice. Are there any overall questions about threat intelligence, threat hunting? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Because that is all I have for right now. This is our halftime show. And we're gonna switch over. But yeah, thank you guys.
Zoom chat to see if anyone asked anything.
Let's check the Zoom. Yes, I have not been checking the Zoom. That is bad on me.
Okay. Hopefully, I go one year out the other because a lot of the things he mentioned are things that I've worked with. Let me be.
Okay, Adam, if I go back a slide, okay, let's see. I stopped sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, let's see. Right. Adam, was that the slide you're looking for? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
We don't
all,
see like the little bubbles, dot.
you the Zoom not have like the
Oh,
active
this doesn't have like.
Discord, several people are typing, you know, it's getting.
Oh, we still.
That would be terrifying. Can you imagine giving a presentation and all you see is like 20 different spots? It's because people are typing.
Yeah, several people are typing.
People typing.
No, it doesn't.
Am I like hand on what client?
Yeah, you have to,
Okay.
if you have the paid version, it'll show you.
Something on Zoom?
Yeah.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom. When I get
Most
back.
colleges pay for it, that's why like they can run over like the 30-minute time limit and stuff like that.
Yeah, threat hunting could be like what I described, which was within a network. So that would be, for example, if a company had like an active blue team. But I think what Adam's getting at too is there can also be threat hunting where they're actively destroying like sources of malware, like shutting stuff down. I think that's what he's getting at, though I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, but
IR would be kind of similar to what I described. Adam would be, I think, what he is getting at is like taking a proactive approach.
Okay.
yeah, it's more like CIA or other companies. And like
Yes.
basically renting.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I think the NSA actually does that. I think they have like an internal, like a basically counterintelligence would be that's similar to what it. Yeah.
Well, they have to.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Just counter. They have. You're not nice.
I cannot speak to the capabilities of the United States government.
Well, we created the first, like,
Stuff.
yeah.
We did create Stuxnet, yes.
Among others.
Probably more.
I mean, there's the first malware viruses were made in US.
Yeah.
Was the first one like made accidentally like in a call to that? The first worm?
Well, I mean, yeah, because like, I mean, because it was I think he was trying to like automatically like back up like stuff over, I think it was ARPANET. And then it like spread and yeah, it got out of control.
He was trying to make a virus. He just like made it too good by accident.
Who's the kid who made a virus on a floppy disk? I think that was.
The Morris worm, there you go.
Oh, the one that. Yeah, and it copies into the next floppy disk.
Well,
He was like 14.
you guys know what my favorite virus is.
Which one?
Cup holder.
I don't know what that is.
It opens up your CD tray.
Yeah.
That's
That's the one for
The best one is the one that makes you what's that like bad and when you try and X out, that duck comes
They're
and
like-
grabs it.
Like,
Yeah.
There are like a dozen clubs that are practicing this area.
Yeah, a lot of the video game clubs meet at
Like
here
this stuff
Friday
on
night.
your own. Probably like a one of them or something to like practice it. But I
That's
know
true.
Pretty
a
good.
lot of other stuff in blue teaming with Splunk, you just have like, queries that you just go through, or like with forensics, there's like labs for that, or then like labs that you could do for threat intelligence, or that's something you just kind of have like research on your own, really like do it on your own.
That's an excellent question. So, for the recording, basically, he was asking about how do you go about practicing threat intelligence? Is it like a dedicated career path, or is it part of a lab, or basically how you go about actually performing threat intelligence? There are several different ways, since it's really just a category of like a branch of cybersecurity. If you're on the blue team, like in a blue team environment, chances are you're going to be doing some kind of threat intelligence in one way or another. If you want to do like just threat intelligence, like be a threat intelligence expert, probably the best bet would be like a cybersecurity lab or like a defense lab. And then another one too is we're also going to touch on this, I believe, also in the spring semester in the advanced workshops. Forensics would also be doing a lot of threat intelligence. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
I haven't personally tried this myself, but there's a website called cyware.com. And you can practice cybersecurity threat intelligence scenarios and generators on that. I haven't tried it myself.
There are also, I didn't post them because I didn't think they were really going to be of much use, but there are sandbox websites too, where you can, like, for example, upload a virus into a controlled environment and then see how it'll behave. And then some of them also have like saved environments to like demonstrate, oh, this is what would happen with that malware.
Yeah, there's also a porto.com as well.
Can you send those two
Yeah,
websites
also.
in the advanced workshops channel? Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'm going to switch over to the do you want to do it on your laptop?
Yeah, it's
Okay. So do you want me to end this then? Okay, so I'm gonna end this.
good night.
Good night. Adam,
Bye,
Adam, they said goodbye.